Peter Charles is one of those riders whose career speaks for itself. Olympic gold, decades at the top of the sport, and a way of thinking that has shaped generations of horses and riders. This conversation is packed with insight for show jumpers at every level, and it may shift what you prioritize in your own riding. He talks about time, confidence, and decision-making in a way that may change how you think about success in this sport. And once you hear it, it's hard to go back to rushing the process.
Dear Horse World, it's Peter Charles.
Peter, welcome to the Dear Horse World podcast.
Thank you, Noelle. This is my first ever podcast, so I hope I don't screw it up.
I'm pretty pumped that this is your first podcast, and I'm really excited that you're here. And it's really unexpected that I get to chat with you because, is this the first time you've been to Ocala?
No, I was here last year.
Yeah.
It's fine. My sister used to have a big horse farm here, but I never got to visit. She had a lot of thoroughbreds, and she actually had 5 Breeders' Cups winners from here. But,
so horses are very much in the family then?
Not originally, but yeah, getting there.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's very cool. So I'm very excited that we get to chat because I think I love that about the horse world is that we find ourselves all over the world and you unexpectedly get to connect with people. And so I had Harry in the studio and we got to talking about how you started and how you how you got your start in the horse world. And it's very drastically different to the way that he started.
Correct.
And I thought we could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. You have to deal with what you are given. And when you don't know any better, that's fine. So I had a very happy childhood in Liverpool playing football on the streets. I was the youngest of 8. My mother came over from Ireland. She was from Johnstown and Kilkenny. And we went to the local school. Sadly, my parents died when I was young. And then I left Liverpool when I was 15. Went to go and work in Ireland and found horses as a way of expressing what I wanted to do in life, be out of a city, not be involved in. Football would have been great, but it wasn't good enough. That was the first hurdle I had to overcome. But I got on great with horses and started from there and spent 6 or 7 years there with a woman called Scarlett. Eddie Mackham was a good friend who gave me a good start in horses, and moved over to Hicksted and got a job riding for the master of Hicksted. And those days, Dougie Bunn ran Hicksted, and it was like the mecca of all of Europe. So I worked my way through up the ranks until about the age of 24 when I got my first big win in a World Cup.
Okay, so let's do the math. You started at 15?
Yep.
As a groom?
Yep.
And when was the first time that you got to actually ride? When did they start giving you opportunities to ride?
So if we worked well and applied ourselves well in a woman called Iris Kellett, you got to ride a horse once a week and you got a lesson, and that was fine. It was good. But there's a lot of ponies out the back.
Wow.
For the riding school. So we made some string halters and then we used to ride them in the evenings. Bareback. We did a lot bareback. That was fine. No, but it was, when you don't know any better.
Yeah.
It's fine. That was all, for me, that was a great opportunity.
So you started as a groom at 15 and you won your first World Cup at 24.
Yep.
So that's a good amount of time.
That was on a 7-year-old.
And you won a World Cup on a 7-year-old.
April's son, yeah, Brussels World Cup, yeah.
Wow. So I'd love to do a little bit of a flashback here because you have watched the horse world change a lot over the decades. And what we're talking about is not too dissimilar in age to Harry, your son.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you see as the biggest changes if you were to look at the way that you started and how the sport was at 24 years old, the first time you won a World Cup?
Well, first and foremost, let's just compare that with Harry. So with my knowledge, my ability to be able to train him as a father, it's not difficult, not easy to do.
No.
You've got to have a lot of different emotions as a father and a trainer.
Yeah.
And you've got to separate the two. It doesn't work if you don't. And so we made that point very clear from an early age. Also with his two sisters, Scarlett and Sienna. And I put my own stamp as I would have liked to have ridden, as I would have liked to have done it. So I had a vision of what I wanted. I've trained many riders from Connor Swale, Cameron Hanley, Dermot Leonard, got lots of good pals out there, Kevin Babington, God bless him, great friend of mine. We've done a lot. I've done a lot with a lot of riders. But this was going to be a special project for me with my children. And I had it pretty much mapped out how I wanted them to be. But if they didn't have the talent in the first place, I was going to be very honest with them. And all three of them are really well talented. So I do believe with really good training and the talent they had, we could achieve lots of things. But I didn't want them, I wanted them to start the ladder properly. They didn't need to scrimp and save to be able to have a lesson. That was all provided for. We had good facilities. So they had lots of advantages, which maybe I didn't have. But that was a plus because we used it to our advantage. But they were very appreciative of how the sport worked and respect for the work and the training that had to be done, hard work, and tons of it.
So when you say that you had an opportunity to do it how you would have wanted to do it, can you be more specific about what you...
Sure, because hindsight's great.
Yeah.
So looking in the mirror, I'm not one for harping on about how it should have been. I know that the opportunities I had in life, I was very lucky to receive. But I do know, without a doubt, had I been born into an equestrian family, I would have got going way quicker. I would have got up the ladder quicker and maybe achieved a lot more quicker. I don't ever regret that, but I know that was life. That's the way it was.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure those opportunities that were available to my children were available as early as possible so that the content they had and the experience they had it from an early age in order to mold them, train them, and it became part of their life. So basically your muscle memory, your mind memory, everything was there from an early age to try and eliminate any bad habits early on and make them as good as they could possibly be. So I was always very simplistic in that. It was always about the basics, getting that right.
Okay.
Learning from your own mistakes, explaining the mistakes well. And Harry's took that on board very well, so what he's done from an early age, he's achieved way more. I mean, I only won one World Cup at 24, that was about it. But he's won a couple now, he's won multiple Grand Prix, he's got a bronze at the Worlds, he's got a gold at the Olympics, I can't say he's gone to plan, because that sounds big-headed, right? But I'm not surprised either.
So how do you keep your kids grounded throughout that process?
That's easy. They're nice, they're great people. It's fine, no problem.
But if you were to, so if there's, let's imagine there's a lot of parents listening to this, or there's parents who want to bring their kids up in the sport. And if they're given great horses and they get to go to great shows and they get to have all those opportunities, how do you keep...
Well, in the beginning we had normal, we didn't have great horses.
Okay.
Harry had a couple of event horses I bought.
Yeah.
Victor and Contro too. Really nice. They didn't cost a lot.
Okay.
He got Tarkin on both of those horses. He went there to jump the Grand Prix on a horse called Quantum Cruise I bought and produced from 6-year-old.
Okay.
Yeah, so he went there on a string of horses that didn't cost a couple $100.
Really?
Literally, yeah. So, and he had to learn his trade on those. He had to learn to ride them. He had to learn to kick and pull at the right time. He had to be inventive in his thinking.
So it sounds like you didn't, while you gave them opportunities, you didn't necessarily make it easy.
No, they had to get the best out of what they had.
Yeah. And you think that's a very important skill to have as a rider? I
think a lot of, there's two systems, isn't there? What we do in Europe and what the American kids do. And I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong, but I wouldn't swap the system we have for the American system.
Okay, I want to dive into that.
Okay.
What are the big differences between the two systems?
We don't have hunter riders or equitation, whatever the two disciplines are. And I think there's good parts to it in that it gets kids to sit well on a horse and what have you. But it's a bit stereotyped, and they have to have the horses. I've watched a lot. They have to have them that quiet and that zoned out that the rider sits there a bit like a dummy. And it doesn't produce for me a reactive rider. It takes away a lot of your natural instinct to do stuff at the right time. But in the pony riding in Europe and in England, okay, it can go the other way. It can go a bit rough and ready.
I've seen Dublin pony jumping. It's crazy.
But it does give a natural fight for the rider to be competitive. Their reaction times, they learn to be really quick. The first reactions have to be good. And it gives them the art of the ring craft, of being a competitor without being judged as they are in the hunter ring, which I love anyway. I love somebody's score to count. So I like that. And it's only personal. I'm not saying the other way's wrong. It's produced many, many great riders.
Yeah.
But if I have a choice, if I have grandchildren in the future, they won't be doing any hunter classes.
So looking at how you kept your kids grounded through this process, and all three of them, which is amazing, all three of them are active in the sport, right?
Correct.
And Harry told me something interesting in his podcast. He said that you actually kind of almost encouraged him away from the horses.
They had to want to do it themselves, all three of them. So in order for them to love what they do, and you must love what you do in life. If it's a job and you don't love it, you have the reason for getting up in the morning every day when it's difficult is hard. Simple. So the choice had to be his. I was very aware of what I do didn't have to be his choice. Sorry, had to be his choice, not my choice. So I try to do everything but ride. And we did football, we did swimming, we did golf, we did everything. And he had a really good skill at golf. So I really put a lot of time and effort into helping him do that. And he did very well at golf. But he downed tools on me completely and refused to do it anymore. And he wanted to ride. So I let him go and do that for a year at home by himself with one of our head grooms. And he stuck at it for a year. And then eventually I then said, okay, I'll get involved a bit more. And it was an easy task from there, really, because he was very keen, loved the horses. He's a beautiful horseman on a horse. But the girls, I couldn't stop them. No chance.
Yeah.
They run over me in the morning to get on the ponies. No chance. Absolute. But Scarlett is also a beautiful, an artist.
Yeah.
She does the most beautiful paintings. And Sienna is a tiger and art, and Scarlett she's an artist in everything. She does the way she rides, the way she conducts herself, the way she paints. She's a beautiful person in what she does. And Sienna's like a tiger.
Something really important you're touching on here is it seems like you were able to balance that, giving them the opportunity. It's kind of like a saying. I remember this is a saying I was raised, which is give them enough to do something, but not so much to do nothing. Yep. It's an old saying, which is like how much to support your kids as you're raising them. And so it sounds like you did a really good job of balancing the motivation and the opportunity, which is an art.
They've always got to want more.
Yeah.
You know, if you overfeed the dog, he's not going to eat anymore, is he? That's it. You have to have them. They need to push you, and I want them to push me, push the boundaries to learn, to train, to compete, and put the whole package together and keep improving. But it's small steps. You're not going to do it all in one day. And it's an old age saying you learn more from your mistakes, but you actually do. Very, very easy when you've won a class to come home and be happy and what have you. Hardest thing in the world to do is ring a sponsor. You've had a complete disaster. The horse has gone bad. You don't make that phone call. That phone call would be to me from the kids. I said, always let me know how you go. If I'm not there, always let me know how you go. Because we can go through it, whatever. Carry your disappointment for a short period of time. Learn to psychologically deal with it, put it behind you, learn from it, and try and do better. That's all you can do as a sportsman, as a competitor. Learn from your mistakes and understand them, because understanding them is the only way you can improve. If you know you've made a mistake but don't understand how you've made it, whether, go and get help, find out, ask. Then you can begin to put the components together to improve, to fix that. That's how you learn. That's how you go on. So that's basically what we've done all along. Whether it's horse riding, or they've made a mistake, or learn to give horses time. That's a big one. Giving horses time.
What do you mean by that?
Some of them develop all differently. So we breed a lot, and some of them, I've seen them from foals right through. Some of them show you a lot of talent at 4-year-old. I don't need to see everything at 4 and 5-year-old, but I need to see something. Even if it's only one small window of talent, that will do, and I can put them away, get them stronger, work them a bit more, maybe give them time out in the field. And then on the subject of improvement over time, you do need to see it with the young horses and riders. So I've tried to teach my children that. Never judge every horse on every jump, especially the young ones. If you do, you're going to be disappointed more than you'll be pleased, because the improvement takes time for the horse in his mental stage to understand everything, get the stress levels to where you want them, and get the horse physically strong enough to be able to do what you want them to do one day. And that all comes together as a package as the years go on.
I heard some great horsemen and horsewomen in this podcast studio talk about actually how much later they start their own personal horses. I was really surprised by that, because we live in a system where now the horse world is so celebratory of young horse classes. Even in the Western space, there's tons of futurity. There are people starting horses at, there are horses in the horse world that are backed at 2 years old, which has always shocked me. What do you think about that?
We don't do young horse classes. I've got my whole bunch of 5-year-olds being broke now. So what are we in now? February? Yeah. So my homebred 5-year-olds are in the process of being broke now, and they're 5.
Cool.
Sienna's currently jumping one short, and he went. His first show was at 6.
Wow.
And he did the amateur 110s when he was 6.
Cool.
And now he's jumping 150 Grand Prix. He's jumped 4-star Grand Prix. He's 9-year-old. He's a wonderful horse. If they're good enough to catch up, but you can push them a bit later because they're physically strong enough. I'm not saying that's everybody. Listen, if you're really commercial, and you have a lot of horses being born, and you need to have turnover, you need to break them at end of 3 and 4-year-old to get the turnover, to get the cash flow going. My breeding is my passion and our family's passion. So we want to give every horse every possible chance, but I want them physically strong enough to be able to do what they can do so I don't miss it. Perfect example. The first horse I ever bred was by Animo, and it was a particularly difficult horse at 4-year-old. Rushed over the jumps, didn't show much talent, was difficult in a lot of aspects. And I missed that horse's talent because I underestimated the stress levels the horse showed about being broken, about being ridden. It took time to settle down. So I've learned from that and some of the horses, and I sold them early on. And that later on was sold for a large amount of money from Jimmy Gullickson in Norway to Edward de Rothschild, and it finished second in the Grand Prix at Olympia. And turned out a wonderful horse. So I looked at that whole situation and wondered how I'd do it better, and this is a result of that. Give the horses time. If they're physically strong enough and that's all they can do, that's fine.
Yeah.
Then you've judged them correctly, and you're going to try and place that horse in life where he'll have a good life, a happy life, and he'll be best suited. No point trying to make a 150 horse out of a 130 horse.
Right.
No, that don't work.
It's not fair.
I think if you can place a horse where he's got 20% of his ability still in the tank, then he's going to be very comfortable. There's room for error. And there's a lot more room for the rider to grow with that horse.
What a terrific piece of advice.
I've always tried to do that. If you're competing the horse at 100% of his ability all the time, there's no room for error. And there has to be some wiggle room, just has to be. No one's perfect all the time.
In business, we call it contingency.
Yeah, wiggle room.
Yeah, wiggle room.
So if you've got a bit of wiggle room going into a big Grand Prix,
yeah,
you can feel, if you're on your door handles and there's no room, you've got to be perfect, and that's hard.
And that's a lot of pressure.
That's hard. Yeah, that's hard.
So when going back and talking about, so you've now developed horses and you've developed riders. So what are sort of the three things you're looking for in a young horse that you're developing and a young rider that you're developing?
Well, my riders, they don't have many as my guys at home, so, that's fine. I don't consider myself a trainer.
But you've developed, you talked about all these riders that you've helped and mentored.
Loads of them.
Yeah.
I'm not a trainer. I've got no exams.
Right.
I've got no certificate.
What are some skills that you look for?
What I can do, I can put stuff. I'm like the yeast that comes along at the end and make the cake rise. Right,
cool.
That's what I do.
Yeah,
they need to learn to ride before they come to me. I'm not going to sit there and teach somebody how to ride. But if they have a certain skill and they're ambitious and they want to do well, we can help.
So, what skills do you most admire in a rider?
I love natural talent. That goes a long way. But even if they don't have natural talent and they're willing to work hard, you can put a program together with the right horses that they can get so far in the business. Not maybe going to get all the way, but they're going to get a long way on hard work and dedication. They'll get a long way. Yeah,
that was when I immersed myself in the sport in Europe. That was actually one of the coolest and most eye-opening myths that was debunked for me was there are riders at the top level that don't actually have as much feel as you might think or as much natural talent, but they got there from hard work. And I remember when I learned that from a whole variety of very well-respected horsemen and horsewomen, that really shocked me, because I think when you get raised in the horse world, you think everyone who ends up on the Olympic podium got there on sheer raw talent.
No, not at all. One very good friend of mine, Eric Holstein. I took Eric. Eric had very normal talent, and he had some good sponsors on the Isle of Man that wanted him to jump at the very top. So I told him very straight how it would work. We have to find the right horses. He's going to have to work his butt off. He's going to have to lose a load of weight. He's going to have to basically do everything by the book. And we got Eric right up there. He was double clear in Nations Cups all around the world. Eventually finished 10th individually in the World Championships in Rome.
Wow.
And he got off the horse. He said, that's it. He's done he's achieved his ultimate goal. And he knew he couldn't do any better than that. So he went off driving race cars and was touring car champion of Ireland. So, it's all different things. And that was great to do that with Eric at that time. But if Eric, he knew Eric knew his limitations, and he knew where his strength were, and he needed the help to do it. So he listened. And to be a good listener and a good pupil is very important.
So that's something that you
have to be a good listener. And you have to be able to execute your ideas in a certain manner. If butt and hand and all that carry on, well, carry on up the road, go and find someone else. That don't work.
Cool. What about horses?
They're all different. The modern horse today now is much more of a athlete. They're quicker across the ground, but the surfaces have got so much better. Materials got lighter. And the course builders have a variety of tricks at their disposal to, whether it is time allowed or distances, colours, light, jumping at night, border jumps, everything. So I liken it to a game of chess. you're pitting yourself against a course builder, and you train for different things, and you have to be ready to be adjusted at a moment. The hardest thing people don't understand, and I've helped and advised some very, very smart people in the world, very clever people. But some of them, when they ride a horse, you can't remember to go left or right when they jump the fence.
Really?
No, because you think about it, you're in charge of an animal. The animal is giving you lots of different things back.
Yes.
You land, the horse has put a big jump in. Your first reaction has got to be the right reaction. You got 0.1 whatever second of it is to make. Now you put all that context into the ring, and you've got maybe 76 seconds to get round, and you've got 13, 14 jumps to do it in.
Yeah.
People don't realize how fast a rider's brain has to work, because you've got this fantastic animal underneath you. It's all moving.
Yeah.
Everything's going at 400 meters a minute is a very quick pace to ride at.
Yeah, it is.
Very quick. You can't get the first reaction wrong. If you do, you've got to do it. If you get it wrong, your next reaction has got to be 10 times quicker, because you've got to ride out of trouble.
Right.
Not freeze. You can't go back like golf and get a birdie to put a bogey right.
Right.
So the reaction times of riders, when you see them in the ring, whether it's Grand Prix, Olympics and what have you, they're so well tuned into their horse at that minute in time. And it's not all the time you get that partnership going. It's certain times in the year or certain times in the top horse's career when they gel and they're really in tune with one another. Don't say it becomes easy, it becomes easier.
Yeah.
But that's what you work towards, having those moments in time when you are at one with your horse and you feel you can win anything. I've had those moments. Plenty of riders have had those moments, but it doesn't last forever.
Right.
It's a bumpy road.
It's like a moment in time.
Yeah, and you get it, and you feel you can do something really good. But that's what, from the outside world, people don't realize with show jumping.
Yeah, it's more like, I've always referenced it when people who don't understand what we do, I say that it's a lot more like downhill ski racing.
Yeah.
It's just a million different micro decisions made over a short period of time.
And when these riders now, these top boys, they go on the clock. They are putting every sinew into it to take the risks.
Yeah.
So the chance of them getting it wrong are going to be far greater than getting it right.
Yeah.
I've seen that many times. So the risk factor really climbs. So the decision making has got to be so good and so fast to give the right instruction.
How do you mentor that, or how do you develop that as a skill?
A lot of confidence.
So how do you develop confidence? At Conaway & Associates Equine Insurance Services, they understand how special your horse is. That's why I personally chose to work with them to insure my horses before we embarked on this epic journey across the country. I chose them because their agency writes coverage in 48 states. They also work with several A-rated admitted insurance carriers, so you have options and can select the insurance coverage that best suits your own unique needs. Having confidence in my insurance selection allows me peace of mind on this journey. I can focus on my horses and embrace these learning opportunities of a lifetime. Who better to trust with the insurance of your horse than a team of fellow horse people? Conaway & Associates was founded in 1992 by Laura Conaway, herself a Grand Prix show jumping rider. Laura and her experienced team have built a strong reputation as a reliable partner, building relationships through service, trust, and understanding. Explore www.conaway.net or call them for competitive, personalized insurance coverage options from their team of like-minded equine insurance professionals. So how do you develop confidence?
Confidence, good riding, ride horses, placing them in the right competitions at the right time, not overfacing the horse and rider on continuous shows and tours. Understanding every horse benefits from a few easy rounds,
Yes.
as so does every rider.
Mm.
You know, you can't have pressure week in, week out, World Cup in the winter, championships in the summer, team competitions going, it's a lot. So the multiple partnerships each rider has to make, they need time to make those partnerships.
Mm.
There are a lot of the lads now, because of the world ranking, they're riding maybe 5, 6, 7 Grand Prix horses in that string. And that's all individual mind games, different setups, these riders are, I think now they're at the maximum of terms of shows, responsibilities. It's changed. You asked me how much has changed earlier.
Yeah.
I was able to find my own horses, organize my own schedules, sort the vet out. I did everything myself.
Yeah.
Drove the truck, did everything. It's very hard for a rider to do all that now.
Why?
The shows are non-stop. The responsibilities to sponsors are extensive. Travel has got way more, getting from A to B, and you can be in multiple continents. And the shows are never ending. So with that, the travel is never ending. So you've got to really rotate the horses well. But the rider is on the road all the time. So I try and rotate the horses we have so they all get a bit of downtime 2 to 3 months in the year. But Harry doesn't get rotated. So,
Yeah.
And there's been highs and lows in his career, more highs. But it's learning to deal with the disappointments. Again, like I said, that's where you can learn your most. But also having the confidence. So go back to what you said, when you go into big jump-offs, when you go into big, like the Olympics, the confidence you have comes from your training, from your preparation, and going in there, knowing you've got everything, you haven't left anything to chance. I don't like surprises.
As you're speaking, it makes me think that the system we've created, and I want to dive into this with you, because I think retrospectively looking at the way things have evolved, there's always a lot of value in that. But when you talk about how there's more events, and so more events means more money, which means you require more horses to compete on the circuit, which means you need more money. And so the thing that we've lost, from what I can gather, and I'm interested what you think about this, but the thing that we've lost, everybody, because of this bigger beast that has evolved, that is called the show circuit. And it's not just in show jumping. I mean, there are more horse show events, I think, across the disciplines than ever before. Is time. And we were talking.
You can't buy time.
No.
Time is precious. And time spent creating a partnership will pay so much more rewards later on in life. So if you can really create your partnership, spend time making it, you're going to be, it's like putting on a well-worn pair of gloves. They're going to fit, you're going to go out there, they're going to feel like a second skin on you. That part, if that is skipped in the process, you'll be found out down the line somewhere.
It'll come out in the wash.
Yeah.
It makes me think that there are so many things that are unequal in this industry, right? Like there's the factor of money is a factor, accessibility is a factor, even looking at the systems, they're different depending on where you were raised. But the one universal factor that we all have the same amount of is time. So if you abuse that, or you don't use it properly.
Use it well. Use it well, and a smart person will figure that out with good help. Having a good team around you. The basics, everyone can learn. And you do that with good time. Time spent in the saddle, learning to ride properly, not skipping anything. Good horsemanship is down to your flat work, your riding. And you need to be on the best horse, most expensive horse in the world to do that. And I do believe if you do that well and do that correctly, you will get seen, you will get an opportunity, and you will get on. But you will have to work a bit harder than everybody else. If you haven't got the money, but you've got the talent, and you'll have to work night and day at it. And I don't believe I've seen anybody who was super talented who really wanted it, didn't get there. I've
Really?
seen people super talented who thought the world owed them a living and not get there. That's different.
I completely agree. So I want to go back to a story that you were sharing with me before we started recording, where we were talking about, and I referenced this example or this idea of, it was golf, like the horse industry and the circuit itself was more like golf, and now it's more like tennis, and you're more chasing everything. And you shared with me that when you had your string of horses and when things were different, there was an event that you would be trying to qualify for, and it was like a big deal. It was this huge ramp up of time and preparation. So there was a smaller amount of apexes throughout the year.
Sure. So how the sport has evolved has come from primarily location and money.
Right.
There's the shows. The industry itself, the horse industry, is a different level, but we had the deep history we had, which is a shame, I think, for the younger generation coming up. We had a beautiful series called the Nations Cup Series.
Yeah.
8 shows.
Yeah.
Bottom team went out. Next team waiting came in. And we did Aachen, Rome, Liverpool, Hickstead, Dublin, Calgary. And that was like a world championship in a funny sort of a way each year. Who won the Nations Cup Series that year?
Yeah.
You learn to ride for your country at a really high level. You learn to fight for each other on a team. You got the opportunity to do it multiple times in the year. Really prepared you well for championships. But the venues were outstanding. You know, from Liverpool to Rome, St. Gallen, Aachen, Hickstead, Dublin, Calgary. World-class venues, beautiful arenas, packed stadiums. How the sport should be, in my opinion, in the outdoor arenas. And then, the end of the year, the biggest money by a mile was Calgary. So it was like a mecca to get to Calgary. Everybody wanted to fight to get there. If you got on a ticket and invite and you're on the plane to Calgary, like a golden ticket, and the money was astronomical compared to all the other events we jumped in.
Yeah.
So, you know, that the respect you had of the people who went there and won those Grand Prix and did well was enormous. It was like winning. If you won Calgary, it's like winning a major championship.
Yeah.
In the year. I was lucky enough. I got the first $1 million Grand Prix on lane in '96. I came and we had some celebration on the plane.
Yeah.
The boys somehow, when I wasn't looking, nicked my check. And the panic, I was, how embarrassing is this? Had to ring up and say I've lost the check. Anyway, it was different in terms of it meant a lot. Now there's so many big shows with money. Sure, it's gone on. Nobody's going to say it hasn't improved in certain areas.
Sure.
You know, but I do think in that you've also got to pace yourself, especially your horses. I said earlier about the riders, they don't get burnout.
Yeah.
It's very hard for them mentally all the time at that level. That, you know, I think 2 good riders who do it very well in that we can relate to are Scott and Ben.
Scott Bosch and Ben Mare.
Yeah, very good lads. They're very good mentors for Harry and the younger riders coming up because they work ever so hard. They apply themselves well. You never see them get too disappointed. But staying at the top of the sport like they have with the way they do it and they apply themselves, you know, you hardly ever, you wouldn't see them in a nightclub or going out drinking or none of that. They're proper hard-working professionals. And I think they're a credit to how somebody should do the sport. And, you know, I admire them for how they also help the younger riders coming on. They're always ready to give a hand and some advice, which is good. You know, the team that jumped in in Herning.
Yeah.
We got a bronze. They had two young lads, two 22-year-olds,
Yeah.
Joe and Harry on the team. Them two lads, they were brilliant with them. So Joe Stockdale and Harry Charles got a bronze medal. And they did their part. The two lads did their part. But, there was a lot of respect both ways.
Do you think that's a responsibility?
Of course it is, without a doubt. Giving back, helping people, yeah, without a doubt. And showing how the sport should be. Not saying how you want it to be, but how you work your horse as well, how you treat them, how you engage with them on a daily basis, how you plan your schedule around them, everything. So riders can understand. I did that from learning Harvey Smith. I watched him a lot. He was a great horseman. He could make his horses do anything. He'd even go in the ring and make them lie on the ground. They'd sit down. There was, he'd have his horses by his truck at night, sitting down.
Wow.
And he could leave them loose and they'd come running over to him. Harvey was he was term horse whisperer, whatever you want to call it, way ahead of his time. But these people who can understand horses really well, I've got a guy, Will Plunkett, and he breaks all my horses, and William Funnels. Will doesn't need anybody to help him break a horse. He can get on them himself.
Will and Pippa have a pretty cool, the funnel system. I've always thought that was really interesting.
William was my best man at my wedding.
Of course he was.
I've known Pippa all my life and William all my life, and he's just having to breed bigger horses now because he's getting a bit bigger himself. But anyway.
It was funny. I was just chatting with someone the other day and they said that Pippa came over once and did a clinic here and it was the best clinic that they'd ever done.
She's a proper horse.
And you know why?
Yeah.
It was so cool because I said, why? Why was Pippa Funnel the best clinic you've ever done? And she said, because it was all about the basics.
Yeah, no BS. Yeah.
No fancy terms. No, it was just the basics and the foundation of building and eventing horse and understanding how to do that. And she said it was the best clinic that she'd ever done. And Pippa didn't think that she was.
That's been normal though. That wouldn't surprise me with Pippa.
Yeah.
She's a wonderful, wonderful horsewoman. Very well trained by a woman in Norfolk called Ruth McMullen. And Pippa's carried that on and she's helped multiple people ride. She's a big asset to William, what he does with his riders there and producing the young horses and what have you. They're a great team.
Yeah.
But that just goes back again, it works in bucket loads if you do the basics well.
Well, and I think when we talk about the way that the sport was for you and then the way the sport is for Harry, I think one of the things that I think is the hardest to battle, if I were to put myself in your shoes, is you have to mentor riders to fight the concept of, do you know what FOMO is?
Nope. No idea. Tell me.
So it's an acronym, means fear of missing out. And it's like a measurable human behavior that we actually fight. And actually, now that we're on social media, now that we're plagued with algorithms.
Well, you can't run before you can walk.
Right.
So the fear of missing out is in the mind. Right? Because what you want is confidence in you. And I had bucket loads of it. Confidence in your own ability.
Cool. Were you born like that?
I absolutely never lacked confidence. When I knew I was ready to do something, I did it. And I usually won.
Do you think confidence is more important than talent?
Goes a long way to have both. But you can't do talent without you need confidence. You have to build, and you can build it. If it's not there, you can build it. You can train it. You can memorize it in a sort of a way through repetition and good rounds and what have you.
Yeah.
I was very, very lucky. I had a lot of confidence in I wasn't the world's best rider, but I didn't think anyone could beat me when I was ready.
That's cool.
Yep.
Okay. Before we wrap up, I want to ask you about something that Harry told me about you that I was really intrigued by.
Answer's no.
He said that you are one of the most positive people he's ever met.
Confidence.
And you don't want to have anything to do. You don't want to be around negative people. He said that when you're around negative people, you keep them at an arm's length. Is that true?
Yeah, no time for it. You have to find a positive out of every negative. Have to. In life in general, you've got to be. Yeah, it can get you down for 2 minutes, but if I can sort it out. I can't say mopiness or I can't do this, I can't do it doesn't, I can sort it. get on with it.
It really made me think, because the horse world could be a very negative place.
Only if you let it. Only if you let it. And we have a good rapport. I mean, Harry's gone through a transitional period now, building up a new string of horses. He's going to drop down the rankings a bit. He's Arrow and Blue went to a nice, and Thompson kindly gave it to a nice young American girl coming up, which is not great for us, but great for the girl.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful mare. Then Romeo's off till April. He's having a nice rest after the Olympics, and Blue retired. So there were 3 great horses he had last year, which he hasn't got this year. He'll have Romeo later on, obviously. Yeah. So we've got to build a new string. So installing in him, you take some time then to give these new horses time, find more. We'll find some more sponsors, some owners to come in and help. We'll do it again, and we'll do it just as well. We'll do it maybe even better. But I don't take a backward step as negativity. I take a backward step in terms to rebuild as a positive step, knowing what we know, and with his experience, I think he's only just got his first foot on the ladder.
Well, and it makes me think that, so when you look at sports, and we talked about football at the beginning of the episode, and actually you can look at football, rugby, all the great team sports. That happens all the time. You have an amazing team, you have a world champion team, and then some of those players retire, and then you have to bring up all the young players, and you have to rebuild. And coaches talk about it all the time. They say, we are rebuilding. We are in a stage of rebuilding. And I think of all the commerce of the side of the horse world. You actually like almost steal that away from riders if they never build and they never foster that patience, right? Then they think that it's just instant.
Well, what's very, very important is the team behind the rider. Right. Who builds that team?
Right.
So we're very fortunate that we have a great bunch of staff.
Mm.
We have some very good production riders. We've got, I think, a lovely breeding program. We add to that as well. We've got foals out of the same mother as All In and Coldplay. We've got beautiful Chaco Blues. We've got Diamant Assemblies. We've got Cornets. We've got the most beautiful foals out of Blue de Reverton.
Cool. All the breeders, Thompson. All the breeding fans are listening to this, and they're really excited.
Yeah, I believe we have got a wonderful set of, and we've got, but most importantly, they're great mares.
Is that more important, you think?
Absolutely. Without a good mare, you don't know her.
Really?
Well, a father can only improve the mare, right? He can only improve the mare. So if he's bettered the mare a small bit, he's done his job well. That's the way I look at it.
Right.
So if you have a nice normal mare that jumped 130, how is that stallion going to make that mare produce a 160 horse? It's going to be very difficult. So if he can produce a nice 140 horse out of a 130, and he's a 160 jumper, he's done his job. That's all he can do.
Yeah.
But if that mare's got, I try to look for 2 or 3 generations of really good breeding in there.
Yeah.
Some good black type going back, bum, 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 bum. The chances, so that's generational in that bloodline on the mother's side. Put that with a really good stallion that's also proven. You're increasing your chances, not guaranteed, you're increasing your chances of getting a good foal.
That's so cool.
That's all I've done. It's not rocket science. Anyone can do it. But you have to like the conformation. You have to like the look of the horse and the technique.
Okay, so before we actually, and I know I kept saying that we're going to wrap up, but actually there's one more thing that I want to talk about because it was so cool. When we were driving, when we drove Harry to the podcast, I remember explicitly what he was talking about. He said, my dad hates to be duped. He wants to know everything there is about a topic. So he's learned everything about soundness and the management of a horse. Everything. He's like, he knows more than most about how to get a horse, keep a horse sound. He said, then when we started breeding, he's like, he just dove straight into breeding and wanted to know everything there was to know about breeding. So when I listened to that, it was like such a strong message of, if you want to do something in the horse world, like there's so much information accessible to you. And I thought you're a walking example of how you can actually use information and knowledge as like a, not like a weapon, but like as like
well, it's information and knowledge is it's a tool to use. It gives you a more informed decision. You can make better decisions with that.
Yeah. So you started breeding, and then you
I
obviously
have no idea how he said that. I don't even know he looks at me. I thought he wouldn't even know it, but he's right. I like information. I love to have been a medical inventor.
Yeah.
He
said you're insatiable when you come to consuming information.
I never really had a proper education, but I would have loved a good education in medicine and science and all that. I think people who come up with, I watched a lot with the vaccines, how they did it with a dead virus. Fantastic how they did the timescales on it. Horses, tendons, regenerative tissue. I read a lot about that. I know a lot about how to get horses sound. I'm not a vet, but I can work well with vets.
Yeah.
And you have to have that in your locker in order to be able to help your horses as much as possible. And I'm not afraid to buy a problem with a horse to be able to help that horse, because they're not all going to stay sound. And if you look at it, if you can get a horse for a third of his life in the ring jumping, you've done well. You've done well.
Yeah. Everybody bookmark that one.
Yeah.
Right? Realistic and measurable.
Sure. I mean, he's going to be trained. He's going to be broken. He's going to go off color. He's going to go. They all have periods where something's gone wrong with them. We have a vet in the yard. The vet comes to vet a horse.
Yeah.
Within an hour, he can tell you every problem.
Yeah.
What's wrong with your horse for the client? It's got this. It's got that. It's not going to do it. It's all bullshit.
That's their job.
That's the nonsense half of it.
Really?
Yeah. Well, if you get another vet and he'll tell you 10 different things as well.
And don't you? And so this is something that I've even been navigating with my own horses.
Yeah, but you get that same vet in.
Yeah.
And you go, lame horse. Oh, we're not sure. We'll have to X-ray, MRI. They don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of the time.
So what's the biggest advice you would give to all of our listeners who are listening about navigating that? Because a lot of people who are listening to this podcast are not like, a lot of the riders that we're talking about at the show circuit that have a whole team of people behind them.
No, that's true.
So how do they empower themselves?
So if you've got a good relationship with your vet, ask questions. Try and learn. That's what I did.
Yeah.
Ask, well, why do you think he's lame there? And what is the solution? And if he is lame there, how, the solution is how do we fix it and what treatment? Try and learn about different things. Read books. There's some very, very, very good veterinary books out there on lamenesses and issues and tendons, suspensories, some topics which, MRI imaging can throw up more problems than it solves, for example.
Yeah.
You will learn from information. And never, ever be afraid to ask. Question everything. If you're not sure, question everything.
That's amazing advice, Peter.
That's all right.
It's because it makes me think knowledge is like, it's not free, but it's the one, it's again, like time, it's how you use it. It's, and that's unique to every single person.
And know your horse. I mean, take him out before you ride him, maybe 2-3 times a week, trot him up. Look at him move. Video it. So you've got a record of it. Video him after he's had 3 hard days jumping. Take him out and video and try and see what is consistent with him. Put him on a circle. Judge him on his movement. Is he if he's a bit sore behind on a suspensory, you'll see it. On a right hind suspensory, you'll see it. Better ridden than you will on the lunge, for example.
Yeah.
So try and know your horse and his movement. And then you know what's consistent with him. So if there's something that is inconsistent, you can spot it quicker.
Amazing. Oh my God, amazing. Okay, so to wrap up every podcast, we do a series called Rapid Fire Questions. And I'm really excited to hear your answers to these. Okay. If you could read one book to the horse world, what would it be? Don't worry, everyone has that response.
Black Beauty.
Yeah? Oh, that's a heck of a book. I love that was your choice. Who is the most iconic horse in history?
For me, Jump Twist.
Yeah. Oh,
Loved it.
great choice. Most undervalued skill as a rider?
Asking questions.
Who is the greatest horseman or horsewoman in history?
There's been many, and I won't answer that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too much because it's very horse dependent.
I love that.
But they do say, and I never seen him, one of the most wonderful, skillful riders of all time was a guy called Seamus Hayes.
Really?
Hmm.
Okay, everyone's going to be Googling who Seamus Hayes
They
is.
said he was an unbelievably talented, skilled rider. But I never got to see him.
Yeah, I've never heard of him before.
No.
Okay, and then last question. Mares, geldings, or stallions?
I'll take all three. I love them all.
Oh, Peter, I have learned so much in this podcast. I am so grateful that you made the time to come on.
It's a pleasure now, anytime.